Greetings, my lovelies. This is Blake here, and welcome to my review of 10 Cloverfield Lane. And when I first saw the trailer for this movie, my mind was blown. They had somehow made a sequel to Cloverfield and kept it a secret from everybody. And this is especially impressive, during the age of the internet when you could find out anything online. So when this trailer was dropped on us, our jaws collectively dropped, and it was awesome. And also really helped that the trailer itself was stunningly well made. I loved how it started off with a much more lighthearted tone, very comical, but then again becomes more progressively edgier and sinister, and it just really caught my attention. I thought this looked great, and the real positive reviews obviously helped too. And then I saw the movie, and I was kind of pissed off. And it's weird because this is a pretty good movie, don't get me wrong. But, well, if you're expecting any sort of connection to Cloverfield, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And I wasn't totally sure what to expect there. I figured that this took place in the same universe and that there might be clues towards the events of the first film. I wasn't necessarily expecting the Cloverfield monster to make like a cameo during the finale or anything, but I didn't catch any connection whatsoever. So if you're expecting the monster to show up at any point, don't. And it makes me even more salty because the marketing campaign is obviously responsible for doing this. So if you go to the film's website, you'll apparently learn that Howard John Goodman's character worked for the same corporation that was indirectly responsible for the Cloverfield monster, rising from the ocean or whatever. But you don't get any clue of that for during the actual movie, so it's obvious that they made this shit up in post-production simply to trick the audience into seeing their film because they'll expect some sort of connection. Because let's face it, good or bad, 10 Cloverfield Lane would probably get skipped over by the masses, at least during its theatrical run. It's not the kind of film that will naturally generate a lot of buzz, and therefore it needed that namesake in order to get everybody's attention, and it worked. But that's still a very cynical attempt to make money, and I just don't approve of it. I'm sure they will fall back and claim that, well, they want the Cloverfield umbrella to be about apocalyptic films with similar themes, not necessarily direct sequels or films that take place within the same universe, but just films that have similar apocalyptic visions. And even that just kind of feels forced and far-fetched, like they're trying to backtrack and justify this. But, so yeah, this really isn't a Cloverfield sequel. It's not even a spiritual sequel. It doesn't even take place in the same universe. Or if it does, you could make a similar argument that Friday the 13th takes place in the same universe. Or if you want to be, hit closer to home, Star Trek takes place in the same universe. That would make about as much sense as this film taking place in the same universe as the first Cloverfield movie. But moving on, the film itself, as I said, was pretty good. I thought the characters were very interesting, even though, yeah, the way they fleshed these people out was very broad. What I mean is, there's really no subtlety here. So if a character is to develop throughout the course of the film, they will stop and explain their backstory. Therefore, when they make certain decisions, you will remember that backstory and be like, oh, well, okay, they are evolving as people. And if the movie needs to make a point about a certain person without outright explaining it, they will still use an example that I just thought was pretty overdone. For example, they're playing a game and they have to guess the name of a movie or something. And The younger guy, Emmett, he's trying to get Howard John Goodman's character to say woman, because that is part of the clue. And so he looks over at Michelle and says, Michelle is, and then John Goodman's character says, girl, princess. And I'm thinking to myself, no, woman would have to come in there sooner or later. And it's kind of inconsistent because at first John Goodman's character does treat her like an adult and just kind of gradually starts almost seeing her as a surrogate daughter. But they're trying to make a point that Howard does not see Michelle as a woman. He sees her as a girl and by proxy his daughter. And so I thought that was a bit cheesy, but at the same time, I gotta give them credit for at least fleshing out these characters and giving them each arcs. Sometimes those character arcs lead to self-destruction. Other times it leads to their redemption. You don't see that done very well in movies these days. Even though 10 Cloverfield Lane is certainly not a masterpiece in how it presents its characters, I thought it did pretty well with them. And it also helped that the actors were really good in their roles. I really liked Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I believe her name is. I've always liked her as an actress, even when she's done some pretty bad or subpar movies. And she does really good here. I liked how the character, is constantly being placed in vulnerable positions, so you do really feel that suspense. However, she's also strong, she's resourceful, and she's proactive, and therefore it's easy to root for her because she's not just, passively letting the men do all the work for her. Emmett, he's sort of a weak-willed, and he's not very assertive, and you do see throughout the course of the film that he does grow, and I like that too. But above everything with Emmett, he's just such a nice and funny guy that you like him anyway. And then Howard John Goodman's character is much trickier because you're not entirely sure whether he's a villain or a hero or somewhere in between. Is he this monster who just abducted this girl and is lying about what's going on outside, or did he rescue her from this attack of some sort? And throughout the movie, much of the suspense is built around this character is unpredictable. Sometimes he can be very nice and fatherly. Other times he can be very hostile and aggressive and dangerous. And John Goodman is excellent. He has the best performance by far, even though the acting overall is really good. I was surprised how this movie made me fear John Goodman. I mean, yeah, he's not necessarily the youngest guy or in the best of shape, but he has so much presence, and the casting was so smart because his size is really pronounced. And that might just be the cinematography, too. Just really constantly putting him in empowering angles to make him seem so much more threatening, and it worked. And I actually thought this film was pretty fast-paced. Usually with these kinds of movies, they tend to drag, or they just... I don't want to say drag, actually. I'll say they just have a very slow-burn style of suspense. And this film always seemed to be moving in some way. At first, like during the first act, it's more about her trying to, escape his clutches because she's not entirely sure what's going on. And then it kind of lightens up. It relies a lot more on the humor mixed in with some intense moments. And it's cool that the intensity usually comes from the actors' performances, not necessarily what's happening around them. But then it becomes progressively, darker, more suspenseful during the second half of the movie, and it always kept my interest. Considering this is the director's first feature film, he did good. There were things I disagreed with here, and I'm not entirely sure what is his fault, but it was a nicely shot movie. It was a nicely directed movie. But above everything, it really made you focus in on the exceptional performances by the actors. And that's how you should do this kind of film. Oddly, my biggest issue with the movie itself, and I'm not really counting the Cloverfield connection by now. That's just, to me, the marketing campaign's fault, not necessarily the movie's. But I was I was confused as to how come they weren't really playing up the claustrophobia. I mean, yeah, there are some intense scenarios, but that's just mainly to do with the fact that these personalities don't necessarily go well together. So, Howard's very aggressive and domineering. He doesn't like Emmett at all. And, there's going to be some sort of blow up. But at the same time, you never really felt like the location was responsible. Now, I am naturally a very claustrophobic person. And I thought it was very strange that throughout this entire film, I never really felt claustrophobic. It takes place in a freaking underground bunker. I felt like the cinematography in particular should have emphasized that. Even when Michelle is crawling through the vents, that seemed like the perfect opportunity to really play into the claustrophobic angle. But I never felt anything. So maybe this film was a bit too polished, a bit too nicely shot, when it should have had a little bit more grit, a little bit more, I don't know, it should have felt more confined. For a film that takes place mostly in an underground bunker, like I said, I never really felt any kind of claustrophobic tension. I felt it from other areas of the movie in terms of tension, but never claustrophobia. And I thought, really, that's just more of a missed opportunity than a real criticism. Also, the ending, oh boy, that's a tough one. This is one of those movies where I really need to watch it again before I can make a final decision on the ending, which is either absurd and stupid or awesome and creative. I actually like the idea. However, I'm not entirely sure I liked the execution, even though... Well, I'll come back to that, because I'm going to have to spoil it a little bit in order to adequately describe it, but I don't want to ruin it for you, so I'll warn you. I'll just say that overall, if you like these kinds of movies, definitely check 10 Cloverfield Lane out. It's good. It's not the greatest example, but it is still a solid flick. Don't go in expecting Cloverfield 2, though, and if that's the only reason why you'd watch this movie, you might just want to wait till it comes out on DVD, because it's good enough to be worth watching, but don't convince yourself that you're going to be seeing something else. That is all I have to say. I did not do a written review of this. I've done a written review of, the first 3 Howling movies, so please read those, and I should have Howling 4 up today. Whether it's up by the time I get this video released, I don't know. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and if you are interested in the spoilers, I'm about to talk about those now. If you're not, go away. So it ends where it turns out that there is an alien invasion. Cool. Kind of an out there idea. I for some reason wasn't really expecting that, but I actually liked it. It kind of threw me off, and I thought the designs of the aliens were really cool. I thought the special effects were shockingly good considering the budget. However, I thought the action involved was kind of hokey and felt like it belonged in a different movie. You see the alien pick up the entire car, and then she throws a Molotov cocktail in its mouth, and then it drops her, and it's like this. I would have been perfectly fine with this ending in another kind of film, but not in this more grounded in reality thriller. It's hard to say, but I had very mixed feelings about the ending, and you probably will too. Whether it ultimately ages well once we see this movie more and more, it's hard to say. And it's hard to say whether 10 Cloverfield Lane will be upstaged by the Cloverfield controversy or not. But still, it didn't ruin the movie for me. I'm just not entirely sure whether it benefited it or maybe kept it from reaching its full potential. The original idea was that it would just be a nuclear holocaust, but the original script apparently played up more on the ambiguity as to whether Howard was lying or not, which in this film you figure out pretty quickly that there is something going on outside, you're just not sure what. So that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you guys later.